Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Digital Officer, The Travel Corporation, Dan Christian, in discussion with Skift Executive Editor, Founding Editor, Dennis Schall.
Dan, thanks for being here. Don't forget your questions for the Q&A at the end. Dan is from Canada. In honor of that, I'd like to say, fuck Trump! But that's just my personal opinion. The Travel Corporation, very interesting company. 29 brands, Kontiki, Trafalgar, Uniworld, Insight Vacations. You have family travel, guided tours, safaris, boutique hotels. 80% of the travel is booked offline. A few years ago, it was 90%. So you underwent a replatforming a few years ago. So tell us about that journey, the types of tech you're using, and some of the lessons you've learned.
That's great. Thanks, Dennis. It's wonderful to be here with everyone. I know from most of you, for the world's largest travel company that many of you have never heard of before, you're more familiar with the 30 brands in the group, Trafalgar, Insight, Kontiki,
How large
Uniworld.
is it?
How much is it in terms
How
of
large is
how
it?
large is it? So we do about $2 billion in revenue a year, over 1 million passengers. And if you look at ttc.com, you'll get a sense of the scale of the business. And to Dennis's point, one of the things that we didn't do a great job before was actually harnessing the power of the collection and actually realizing the opportunities of the group and actually getting them all on the same platform. So the big opportunity for us was actually in the last 2 years getting them all onto Sitecore that we use as a CMS for our 5 largest brands, bringing them onto Salesforce. But the real benefit was actually being able to start to cross-sell those brands, because previously they were all very much siloed. The data was siloed, as Chris will attest to, one of our global head of CRM who's joining us here today, and unlocking the power of all those customers that have had amazing experiences with us and encouraging them to look at a 10-year view. And so 1 year they can take a river cruise in Europe, next year they can take a safari, they can take a guided vacation in Europe, they can take a self-guided trip of Ireland with Brendan Vacations. So that was the real benefit of the platforming. It was actually enabling us to really cross-sell our brands successfully.
And is it still in process, or is it a done deal?
Well, it's amazing, I mean, just how recent it is, because our major shift in 18 months ago is that we moved from seeing our customers as within a brand, so the concept of prospects or past passengers, and we shifted our view to make sure that we saw that particular individual as an opportunity to introduce them to the family of brands. And that really, I mean, we've generated over $20 million in business just in terms of sending emails out, encouraging our past passengers to look at other brands in the group without any major incentive, just actually putting the opportunity in front of them. And so from that perspective, Dennis, we're still at some early stages of realizing the benefits of the 10-year wallet concept.
And you have the luxury of doing this as a private company, whereas
we do.
Some other companies that have to replatform, they have the quarterly earnings reports that they have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We were a family-owned, very successful, very profitable group. And so although we're not public, we are very focused on ROI and making sure that any investments do have a real return. And that's what's enabled the business to grow through acquisition over time and innovate, create new businesses like Busabout, which is hop-on, hop-off bus tours around Europe. That's now coming to the US. So we're introducing that concept to the US, U by Uniworld. So advancing and innovating the product offering is a big part of how the group has really, we're coming off our best year in 5 years. And that's kind of a sign of what's happening in this space right now. And that's why it's pretty cool to be up here with you talking about multi-day tours and some of the mentions that have occurred today. And this is the hottest new sector of travel at the moment. So it's great to be in this space at this time.
Okay, we're going to get to that. So I'm wondering what kind of changes you're seeing in your customer behavior, because I went to some of your sites and people are still requesting quotes.
They are.
They're requesting brochures.
Yeah.
What's up with that? What kind of changes are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think for all of us, the most important thing is making sure that our brands and businesses are meeting the customers where they are, right? So whether it's online, offline, but really it's about having a holistic view and just making sure that our brands remain relevant. And so one of the best examples I can think of was recently my wife and 2 kids, we went to Peru with Trafalgar on a family trip with a small group and had the most incredible time. And my focus whenever I get a chance to experience the product is asking any of our guests, why did you book this trip, and how did you go about it? And there was this lovely family from Milwaukee that decided they wanted to go to Peru. They did some research online. They discovered one of our ads. They then ordered a brochure from 3 different companies. They got the brochures. They put them on the kitchen table. They looked through the options. They decided they were going to go with Trafalgar. They were going to do this Peru trip. They booked it online. And after they booked it online, they called into the call center and booked air. Jeez. And so when you look at all those touch points, so there was 2. Our team that had been responsible for doing the digital advertising played a key assist, as did the website, of course, with the online booking, which has been a huge increase for us. But the brochure is still relevant. One stat I think you'll probably find fascinating, Dennis, is that of customers who've actually booked with us, about 20 to 30% request a brochure after they've booked, because they want that coffee table affirmation. Wow. To be able to share with their friends and family. And so that print piece is still important. So one thing for us, we'll continue to print those brochures so long as our customers actually want them and see benefit from them.
I don't mean this in a mean way. I really
That's
don't.
All right.
But has a millennial ever booked one of your tours?
Yeah, well, So there's actually a millennial brand in our group. So Kentucky is 18 to 35 exclusively. You by Uniworld was focused on 21 to 45. And anyone who's traveling Trafalgar or Insight today was also in that age group once, right? So for us, looking at the lifetime value of a customer, and it's something that we didn't do previously because we were so focused on just trying to get a customer to book a Trafalgar again year after year. And there are some amazing stats in terms of repeat rates being 30, 40%. Someone will book again in 18 months. We have customers that will book 20 or 25 trips in their lifetime. So people who are diehard travelers with our brands. And but the really interesting thing is that it's a broad spectrum. Giving people the opportunity to take independent trips, family trips. It's really finding their travel style, and it evolves over time, right? My wife is now an adamant. She loves traveling Trafalgar and Insight. She was a hardcore backpacker. I worked at Lonely Planet previously, and so we've done a lot of independent travel. But at some point, you do like your bags getting taken to the room, and you do like being handed a bottle. There's certain, wonderful benefits to different styles of travel at different stages of your life, and that's what we're focused on.
Okay. Let's talk about one of the hottest sectors in travel these days, tours and activities. We've seen a lot of M&A activity. Booking Holdings bought Fair Harbor. TripAdvisor bought Bokun. Both are technology companies that bring tours and activities online. So how does this sort of thing affect your business? I mean, you do multi-day tours. They're focused on just, going to a theme park or going to the Empire State Building. Does it have an impact on your business?
For sure, yeah, no, it has a terrific impact on our business. I mean, when you look at this vertical and this sector, we've had so many great sessions today, we have airlines, we've had hotels. I mean, that's 70% of the travel industry. But the really exciting part is what you do when you're there, right? And more companies are starting to really latch onto that and realize that. But they're realizing it because it's 10% of the travel market, and that's about $150 billion vertical, is this tours and activities, and it's very fragmented. I mean, Steve Kaufer from TripAdvisor just recently raised his guidance on the tour category from a $1 billion vertical to a $2 billion vertical, and they only decided it was going to be a $1 billion vertical about 6 months ago. And so when you look at the trajectory that it's on, and that's just TripAdvisor with Viator, and then as you mentioned, Dennis, I mean, I think it's the other way around with, TripAdvisor bought Bokun and Booking Holdings bought Fair Harbor.
Right.
But that 6 months ago, they were, the hottest thing, and now all of a sudden they've been acquired, and there is a frenzy of activity into this space from venture capital. And it's going to be really interesting to see in the next 6 months before we're at Skift New York to see exactly what transpires, who's acquired, who gets invested in, because it's a really exciting space. It's a very hot space at the moment.
Do you think those companies are going to play fair with their tech providers? Like, can you see a day when TripAdvisor will say, you have to use Bokun, or Booking Holdings will say you have to use Fair Harbor, or they'll give different pricing?
Well, it's really interesting because I think as the travel corporation and our group of brands, the big shift that we've had to make is to be channel agnostic and also look at ourselves as a platform. And so how do we actually just make sure that we're accessible to a number of distribution partners, because we're getting more and more demand all the time from these new entrants. They're well funded, they need product. We're vertically integrated. We operate all of these coaches and hire the travel directors. And so we're focused, we're a travel company, not a technology company, and we're not confused about that. I think that's an important thing for us to know and understand. So technology is really empowering our business and helping our business grow, but ultimately we need the operational excellence and the service. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor. When you look at these platforms, it's not about just where you purchased it. It's about the likelihood you're going to come back and repeat, and that you're actually going to love this travel experience. And so for us, that is our loyalty. That is, we don't have points, we don't have rewards, we just have a dedication to service and value and focus on a great experience, and therefore people do come back with us. So I think what's going to be important, to answer your question, is that customers are going to demand certain brands be sold on their platform. And so in that respect, it would be very limited in their scope if they started to, especially at this earliest stage, if they started to become more protectionist. And so I don't see that happening in the short term.
So do you see the OTA? I mean, the OTAs love dynamic packages.
They do.
They have for decades already. Do you see the day when they're going to be selling your brands online, and won't they have to do some replatforming of themselves if they're going to do that?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, you look at the OTA space and how they moved into, a flight, car, hotel, and then they jumped into restaurants all of a sudden, and then there's been this buzz around day tours, and they missed multi-day. And that is going to be quickly corrected in the next 6 to 12 months as acquisitions and investments are made, because it is a huge sector and more people are transacting online. They're very comfortable with the price point and the experience. And what we've seen, to your point about dynamic packaging, the first wave of activity was decompartmentalizing what was an organized tour experience, so starting to kind of break down in the individual component parts. But more and more customers are very comfortable with the idea of being able to actually book that complete experience, adding air to a land-based tour, and then having a complete product offering. That is going to become very compelling for many of them in the very near future. And likely, Dennis, it's not replatforming in many cases for them. It's actually just harnessing the power of the APIs that we and other companies like us can provide them. Mm-hmm. And that's been a big focus for us, is just making sure that, like Tour Radar, they've pushed us to give them additional
because they specialize in multi-day tours.
They absolutely do.
Right.
And they're selling a huge volume of it, and it's ever increasing because they know what it takes to convert. They know that having a sense of urgency with the number of seats that are left makes a difference. So they are asking us for dietary information. The more information we can flow to them, the better they can convert. So we've created a special product council, which includes them, that enables us to figure out what we should prioritize in our APIs to be a better partner.
Do you see a company like that as being an acquisition target by one of the OTAs?
It's a high likelihood.
Okay. Do you know anything? Do you guys invest in startups?
We invest in relationships with startups, and we grow them.
What does that mean?
So there's a number of startups.
I've invested in some relationships. Some worked out, some didn't.
So we've partnered with a number of startups to give them a leg up, right? So Stackla, FIFO, Postbeyond, just to name a few. I mean, one of them that's based here in San Francisco now is a small little startup in Sydney. And we were looking to harness user-generated content because we know that our tours sell primarily through word of mouth. I mean, people come back, they've had an amazing time, they tell their family and friends, they book. So how do we amplify that? That was one of my first focuses in my role, and we used a system called Stackla, which enabled us to take all that user-generated content, put it on our website, so people could see in real time people having these amazing experiences, which doubled our conversion rates. Rather than building it, we use this platform. They're on Series B now. They've moved from Sydney to San Francisco. They're here. They're just so we have very much focused on building up an ecosystem of startups that we work with, but we haven't directly invested in them beyond the money that we pay them to use their services.
Okay, we're going to go to questions in a minute, but quickly, we've heard so much today about personalization and voice and AI. Do those technologies come into play with your company, or will they in the future?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they already are now. I mean, Sitecore 9, the latest version of the platform, which is about personalizing the experience based on what we know about you in a positive way. And I think that's, this talk about personalization and privacy is that we just want to sell you a holiday, right? We just want you to go and have the time of your life. I mean, that's as much as as strong as our motive is. So in terms of actually, you coming back to the website and knowing what you've booked before, what you've searched before, but now we can actually do this with algorithms as opposed to doing it rules-based, which simplifies the effort on our team. And then the other thing, even in our call centers, and yes, there are still call centers, and yes, they're still incredibly valuable, but being able to route a call to an agent that actually has experience with that particular product that's traveled on it before. So when we know the intent of someone who's calling in, and we can actually pair them with the right individual, I love the kind of stuff that like Paul English is doing with Lola, and trying to layer in AI on top of the human experience. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot more success. So we're certainly actively moving in that space.
Okay, one more really quick question. How much do you focus on Chinese travelers?
Well, Chinese outbound travel is growing dramatically. So we have an office in Shanghai, an office also in Singapore, and it's a huge growth market for us. Most of our product is English language, so that's a challenge for us that we're overcoming, but we're changing our marketing, changing our positioning, and making sure that we are relevant to that audience as well. But the number of Asian travelers that are now on a Kentucky or a Insight or a Trafalgar is ever increasing, and it's wonderful to see.
We've time for a couple more questions. How do you manage privacy while doing cross-selling between your brands, 29 brands?
Of course, no, it's a great question. So that's paramount for us, first and foremost. And if anything, we were doing ourselves a disservice by not doing any cross-selling because we were so focused on siloing that data and as Chris very well knows, trying to make sure that we GDPR, and so we're very focused on compliance and making sure that, and so we've updated all of our privacy policies across all of our brand websites to make sure that they understand, and we give them clear opt-outs when we send them an additional message to encourage them. So we are, if anything, very conservative when it comes to how aggressively we would try and cross-sell. So we've always been very mindful of that, and I say, if anything, we play it very safe.
So one question here is to prognosticate about Amazon for us. We read a lot about Amazon and its possible entry into travel. How do you think it will play out if Amazon makes its move?
Yeah, I think it's time. I mean, the recent Skift, you guys do great coverage. I mean, you've covered the tours and activities sector. The recent article on Amazon was an amazing read for everyone here that hasn't had a chance to read it yet, talking about the fact that the obsession over the customer and ruthlessly eliminating any friction. And the concept, it's kind of 4 key principles, and it's, and the Amazon business model is perfectly set up to move into travel. So there's no question it's going to happen. It's just exactly how they're going to choose to approach it and what category.
It's got to be through acquisition, don't you think?
They are such an impressive, innovative company that I wouldn't put it past them to be able to actually develop something, a solution themselves, to focus on a particular product category and really kind of come into this space with a unique angle. So I think there's a number of different ways that Bezos and the team could approach this, but I think it's quite clear that at some point very soon they'll be moving in this space as well, and we'll welcome that.
We'll look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Thanks, everyone. Thanks very much.
That was great.